Hello, everyone. Welcome. We'll allow a few seconds here for more people to enter the Zoom. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. For me, it's the morning time, or whether it's the afternoon or evening. We very much appreciate you joining us once again. And if it's your first time, then welcome. This is our 5th edition of our series, following in the footsteps of the Lotus-Born Guru, the life and liberation of Guru Rinpoche. And today's topic is entrance to Tibet and the binding of spirits. So again, thank you for joining us. I am your host, along with Stefan, Peter, and Noor. I'll be mainly presenting the framework of this webcast, as well as a story in the middle about some of Guru Rinpoche's activities in Nepal on his way to Tibet. So for now, I'll allow my colleagues to introduce themselves.
Hello, everybody. Happy Guru Rinpoche Day. I'm Stefan. I'm joining you today from Spain, and I'll presenting also main sections of the story today, along with the others. Very happy to be here, and happy Guru Rinpoche Day.
Hello, everyone. Happy Guru Rinpoche Day. I'm Peter. I'm zooming in from Samye Hermitage, New York. I'll be sharing some stories as well.
Hello, everybody. Happy Guru Rinpoche Day. I'm Noor, and I am joining you today from Bodhanath in Nepal. And I will also be sharing stories from Guru Rinpoche's principal biography, Pema Katang, along with quotations from the same book. Very happy to have you here.
So as we do every month at the beginning of these series, and as is good to do before anything that we do in general, let's first set our motivation by remembering the words of the awakened masters of the past. By the power and the truth of our gathering here today, may all sentient beings enjoy happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the great happiness devoid of suffering. And may they dwell in the great equanimity that is free from attachment and aversion. Having set this motivation, we now invoke Guru Rinpoche, as we do before each webcast, just as the great masters of our time have done. In today's session, we will invoke Guru Rinpoche using the famous Vajra Guru mantra chanted by Kyabje Chinle Norbu Rinpoche. Many of you know him. If not, he is the son of Kyabje Dujim Rinpoche and father of Kyabje Dzongtsar Khyentse Rinpoche. So we'll now hear from Chinle Norbu Rinpoche.
Om Om Bazar Guru Padmasambhava.
So now that we've set the motivation, let's just quickly recap where we are in our journey of Guru Rinpoche's life story. As I mentioned, this is our 5th edition, which means that we're nearing the halfway point of our story. In our previous webcast, we examined Guru Rinpoche's meeting with his spiritual consort Belmo Shakyadevi at the Swayambhu Stupa, his realization at the Asura caves through Vajrakilaya, and his subsequent subjugation of malevolent spirits at Yarinak and Chimik Changchup. All of these sites, as you might remember, are located in Nepal. So this month, in the 10th month of the Tibetan lunar calendar, we honor Guru Rinpoche's subjugation of evil spirits in his arrival in Tibet. So we're now moving out of Nepal and into Guru Rinpoche's place of activity, which is Tibet. We will trace his enlightened activities at Nepal's E Vihara monastery, his passage through Tsawarong, and his entry into Tibet through Mangul, where he began to subdue the spirits of the land. And throughout today's webcast, you'll hear stories of Guru Rinpoche encountering these sort of haughty forces in these different sites and exuding his sort of powers as a tantrika to subjugate these forces. And this sort of was an essential component to the Dharma taking root in Tibet and beyond. Today's episode, as I mentioned, is the 5th in our series as we continue journeying with Guru Rinpoche through this enlightened landscape. So if you've missed any of the previous episodes, you can catch up on our YouTube channel, or if you click on the NACOR website, you will see different links to the Vimeo page. On the Vimeo page, you can actually select which language you want to hear the webcast presented in. If you're not a native English speaker, this might be an easier way for you to digest the material. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Noor.
Before moving on, I would like to take a moment to thank everybody who generously supported our last 2 NACOR webcasts. These teachings come to life because of your kindness, with each episode costing around $3,000 to produce through the hard work of our dedicated team. For the latest webcast, we received $350 in donation, which went directly towards production costs. If you enjoy these webcasts, please consider contributing. We all really enjoy what we do, and every bit counts. Just a small contribution from each viewer can help us keep bringing these teachings to you. You can support us through a recurring donation on DonorBox or Patreon, or a one-time contribution starting at just $3 through DonorBox or PayPal. Simply scan the QR code or visit samyatranslations.org/donate to give. Any extra funds will support NACOR's continued growth as a comprehensive resource on Buddhist sacred sites, making it accessible and valuable for both seasoned practitioners and newcomers alike. So thank you very much for helping us to make this happen.
So now we turn to the actual journey of Guru Rinpoche. So just to also place everybody again at the beginning. In our last webcast, we spoke of the great attainments of Guru Rinpoche at the Asura and Yanglashe caves through the practice of Vajrakilaya alongside the spiritual consort Belmo Shakyadevi. Guru Rinpoche unlocked the Mahamudra Vidyadhara, in other words, attained great awakening. And subsequently, Guru Rinpoche then visited the land of Nepal and practiced in various locations and subdued evil spirits such as Chumi Changchup, and at Yarinak in Nepal. So while Guru Rinpoche was residing in Nepal, evil forces gathered again in India, and they were attacking the Vajra throne in India at Bodh Gaya. So as many of you recall, Bodh Gaya, we spoke of this sacred site in our second webcast. So for anybody who would like to revisit that, you can go back and listen to that. Or of course, go to our website, nekor.org, and look up the stories that unfolded in more detail at Bodh Gaya. But now here in brief, when Guru Rinpoche now went back from Nepal down south to the Vajra throne or Vajra seat in Bodh Gaya, Guru Rinpoche came to the aid of King Surya Simha, who was at that time in Bodh Gaya, sort of the resident king. And he was very worried because more and more opponents to Buddhism had gathered, and they threatened the Dharma. So at the time in ancient India, there were a lot of debates and challenges. And when you wanted to prove your own religion or philosophical view to be superior, you went to the site where there was sort of the stronghold. So for the opponents to Buddhism at that time, this was always a great attempt to go to Bodh Gaya and try to defeat the Buddhist Dharma there and show that their own view is better. And so to avert this threat, it was not only Guru Rinpoche, but many great masters who then gathered together at Bodh Gaya and entered into debate with these opponents. And not only were they debating for days, they also had a display of magic to show the superiority of the accomplishment and the view. And it's not to no surprise that thanks to the intervention in particular of Guru Rinpoche, the opponents at that time were defeated. And Guru Rinpoche sort of reaffirmed the Buddhist teachings there and secured the stability of the Dharma in the greater region. So while all of this was unfolding, another event was happening or was forming, and that is that in Tibet, so we're moving now from India to Tibet, there the Dharma king Trisong Detsen had the firm wish to establish fully Buddhism within Tibet. And he wanted to accomplish this aspiration by building a great foundation for the Buddhist teachings. So he vowed to follow his aspiration and do so by building a great Samye monastery. So all of this was taking place while Guru Rinpoche was in the south in India. And to fulfill this aspiration, Dharma King Trisong Detsen sought out the help of the great abbot Shantarakshita, who was the abbot of Nalanda monastery at the time. So Dharma King Trisong Detsen sent the royal invitation party to Nalanda to really seek out the greatest scholar to help in the endeavor of establishing Samye monastery. And while Abbot Shantarakshita was in Tibet supporting the Dharma King in every task, they started to lay the foundation of Samye monastery. And here we have this sort of very famous story that actually that all the local untamed spirits of Tibet saw this coming religion, the coming Buddha Dharma, as a great threat to their own existence and to their own dominion over Tibet. Yeah? And immediately they began to intervene. And it's said here that whatever was built during the day was destroyed by wild demons during the night. So the great Abbot Shantarakshita saw that while he had the full extent of the teachings and could help the studying and could teach the Dharma and help to establish the monastic tradition, this sort of challenge that was coming from the demons, from these spirits, could not be tamed by ordinary means, but they needed a great tantric guru. And so it was at this point that Abbot Shantarakshita, as quoted in the Pema Katang, said the following.
Right now, in the presence of India's Vajra throne, dwells the master from Udayana, Padmasambhava, a great master in the 5 fields of learning. He has perfected his training and attained the siddhis, both ordinary and supreme. He conquers demons. The 8 classes of spirits are in his service. Gods and demons tremble before him, and all the spirits bow. If this one you invite, supreme among Buddhas past and future, neither gods nor demons will be able to resist, and your aims will succeed.
So these were the words spoken by Abbot Shantarakshita Du Dharma King Tritsön Detsen, as held here in the Pema Katang and beautifully read by Nor. Thank you. So not only did Abbot Shantarakshita say this, he further told the story of the Bodha Stupa, actually at that point in the Pema Katang. So our first episode of this Neko webcast started with the story of the Bodha Stupa, and 4 brothers making profound aspirations to spread the Buddha's teachings far to the north, to the realm of Tibet. And actually it was these 3 brothers who made the aspirations that one would become a king to establish the Dharma, the other great abbot to establish the monastic tradition and help the spread of the teachings, and the third to become the great tantric teacher to facilitate and quell all the bind all the demons that might oppose this endeavor and dispel all the obstacles. Yeah. And of course, Abbot Shantarakshita was well aware of these aspirations that the 3 brothers had made. And he also realized that actually, almost in a sense, due to these obstacles, in a way, this karmic connection was invoked. And he shared the story with Dharma King Tritsön Detsen, underlying the importance now of inviting the great Guru Padmasambhava. And it was in that moment that also Dharma King Tritsön Detsen then realized how important this karmic connection was and how important this aspiration was. So immediately he sent out 4 of his most trusted envoys. So he sent a royal party to invite Guru Rinpoche from Bodh Gaya. And the search party here was led actually by Nanam Dorji Dujum, who was the 4th brother who made the aspiration at the Bodha Stupa to facilitate the whole process that the first 3 brothers had aspired. Yeah? And so after their long journey, these 4 students finally met Guru Rinpoche in Bodh Gaya. And Guru Rinpoche already knew of their coming and also was aware of the karmic connection that was currently bearing fruits. And so when they offered much gold to Guru Rinpoche and presented their request, Guru Rinpoche immediately accepted and vowed to come to Tibet and help the great endeavor of Dharma King Tritsön Detsen and Abbot Shantarakshita. But at the same time, he said that he would need to return to Nepal first, because in Nepal, he was duly needed to further establish the teachings of Buddhism there. So he sent the royal invitation party back to Tibet and said that he would follow and come in a short while to Tibet, but first he was needed in Nepal. And in Nepal, we're turning to the great monastery of E Vihara, which at the time of Guru Rinpoche was one of the most important sacred sites in the valley, one of the most important establishments for learning and studying the Buddhist teachings. And it was this monastery that Guru Rinpoche now headed towards, sort of the main seat of the teachings in the Kathmandu Valley. And if you imagine ancient Nepal, Nepal had a very important sort of function as an important post on the trade route between Tibet and India, because Nepal had very sort of moderate climate. So it was ideal to sort of pass the winter months in comparison to Tibet. And it was also an ideal place to pass the summer months, which would be much hotter in India. So actually from very early on, Nepal became this sort of very crucial post, not only for trade, but also for the lively exchange of the Buddha Dharma. So you had both scholars and traders traveling down from Tibet and then spending time in Kathmandu before going further down to India, or the other way around, you had scholars and traders from India coming up to Nepal before moving further up north. And so actually also for the great translators, the Tibetan translators that made it all the way down to South India, to just India, the south. And many of them studied Buddhism, for example, also here, and particularly learned the languages of Sanskrit with the resident scholars. Yeah? And so E Vihara is, you can see it here on this beautiful painting. That's a depiction of E Vihara, with at the bottom one of the four main stupas of Patan, also called, sometimes referred to as the four Ashokan stupas, going back to being commissioned by Dharma King Ashoka. And so at the time, while Guru Rinpoche arrived at E Vihara, the kingdom, or the Kathmandu Valley, was divided into smaller kingdoms. So Kathmandu and Patan were, for example, smaller towns and even like kingdoms within the Kathmandu Valley. And this monastery of E Vihara was located in Patan, in the area of Patan. And now the history of discovering which monastery is E Vihara is very interesting and very beautiful, because it was not known for a long period of time where this main seat of Guru Rinpoche was in the Kathmandu Valley. And though frequently mentioned in Tibetan scriptures, it was hard to exactly determine which of the many monasteries was E Vihara, till the time of Kyabje Düjum Rinpoche and Kyabje Chatra Rinpoche, these very two great masters. Here to the left, you can see Kyabje Düjum Rinpoche, and then to the right, Kyabje Chatra Rinpoche, who spent long time in Nepal. And in the earlier days, while both masters were residing in Nepal, in the Kathmandu Valley, they had indications of E Vihara. And it was at that time that Kyabje Chatra Rinpoche went on sort of a tour or a pilgrimage through Patan. And while passing by at the site of E Vihara, at this site, he had this powerful recollection of Guru Rinpoche, and this being the site of E Vihara. And very interestingly, also the name at the time when Rinpoche inquired reflected E Vihara. It was called E Bahi. So you can see the connection between the letter E becoming sort of over time E. And Bahi is in the Newar and Nepali language sort of the shortening of the longer Sanskrit name Vihara to just Vaha, and then in the end Vahi. So you can also see similarities still in the name being continued down to the present. And so since this time, we're actually aware of this sacred monastery, and it was kept and maintained by a small community of Nevars there in Patan till 2015, when the earthquake in Nepal hit. Parts of this monastery were destroyed, and it was at that time that Patrok Rinpoche started the process of renovating the temple. So, and gathering the funds, actually very beautifully, Rinpoche managed to renovate the parts that had been broken and establish a beautiful shrine of Tuktuk Bache Kunze, which you can see here on the next image. Inside the monastery, in the building site that was broken. And not only that, afterwards the monastery was consecrated, and those that were there present at the end of the consecration, you could see like a big halo around the sun. So it was very auspicious time. And since then, the renovations have continued up to the present day. So for all of us that are joining now the pilgrimage, the upcoming pilgrimage in March, we will also visit this very important site, and then we can see how the site has been restored and has now these beautiful statues of Guru Rinpoche, reminding everybody of the time that Guru Rinpoche was actually there, and reflecting the sacredness of this very important tantric center of enlightenment activity. And finally, we also have an image of here of the Ashokan Stupa near E Vihara that was said to have been built by Dharma King, the great Ashokan's daughter, called Charumati. Yeah? So this is when you go outside of E Vihara, you will find this beautiful stupa. And now, after this sort of long introduction, we will turn to Peter, who will share of the events that were unfolding while Guru Rinpoche was present at E Vihara. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan, for that wonderful introduction. So we're now in Nepal. We're in E Vihara. And the story that I'm going to tell today relates to one of Guru Rinpoche's disciples, Princess Kunla Kushi. And if we can recall from last episode, with Guru Rinpoche practicing at Asura Cave in Yanglashe with his Nawari disciple Shakya Devi, we'll remember that one of the key moments from that story was the dispatch of Guru Rinpoche's two disciples, Nawari disciples, to Nalanda Monastery to bring back the Vajra Kalaya teachings, and by doing so, quelling the uprising of demons that had occurred due to the practice that Guru Rinpoche was undertaking with Shakya Devi in Asura Cave. We can remember that just having those scriptures enter the land of Nepal started to quell the famine, the spiritual sort of upheavals that were going on. One of the disciples who went to get those teachings was named Kunlakushi, and she again was a princess, close disciple of Guru Rinpoche, as well as a good friend to his consort Shakyadevi. So the story goes that Guru Rinpoche was called to E Vihara by the king, Shila Manju. And the king and his queen were distraught because they had learned that their daughter, Kunlakushi, was gone. And Shakyadevi was able to share what had happened. They were out one morning picking flowers to offer to the temples. And as they were out in the mountains, going around, finding beautiful flowers, all of a sudden, out of one of the many ponds and lakes you find around the Kathmandu Valley, a beautiful Naga prince, so a Naga, like a serpent spirit prince, emerged. And for those of us who are a little bit familiar with the Nagas, they're often known to be keepers of wealth. And so this was a very wealthy prince who basically proposed to the two ladies, the two disciples of Guru Rinpoche. And while Shakyadevi resisted, Kunlakushi could not. And she followed this Naga prince down into the Naga realms. And from there, she was caught up in all kinds of torments, samsaric torments, and was basically lost to the world. And so for that reason, the king, Shila Manju, the father of Kunlakushi, had called Guru Rinpoche to E Vihara and pleaded with him, please, he said, please save my daughter from her torment, from these other realms that she's been taken to. And Guru Rinpoche assented and went to these Naga realms. And the story is quite detailed, but essentially Guru Rinpoche travels there and through his very presence is able to overcome the demons, the spirits who had overtaken Kunlakushi and bring her back. And he brought her back to E Vihara. And at that point, you can imagine that the daughters meeting again with her father, her family, the Nawari royal family, was filled with tears and emotion. And we can imagine this taking place in E Vihara. And at that point, Guru Rinpoche gave a teaching to her about, the power of purification. So she had lots to purify. She had lots of attachment, apparently. She was, seduced by this prince. And so Guru Rinpoche was able to offer teachings there to help her overcome her attachment, as well as to talk about the power of offerings. And through this, Kunlakushi was able to cleanse her impurities. And it said that she transformed her body into a radiant, crystalline form through these practices. And eventually she reached awakening. So you can see that E Vihara was kind of a hub of Guru Rinpoche's activity. Guru Rinpoche took up residence there, and not only was Guru Rinpoche there, but there were also many other Indian siddhas and other teachers who came to E Vihara to trade in tantric teachings. So they were able to bring the teachings from India to E Vihara to share these teachings with each other, with the Nawari people. Beyond that, Guru Rinpoche was also able to hide treasures, incredible Dharma teachings there at E Vihara, and of course around Nepal as well. Noor, would you read a quote about that?
Over 200 generations hence, sublime Dharma treasures of Udayana, carefully hidden, will be revealed from E Vihara in Nepal.
So that is a prophecy that Guru Rinpoche gave to his consort Bilmo Shakyadevi. And E Vihara is one of those sites that Guru Rinpoche would hide treasures, along with many, many others in Nepal, including at Asura Cave, which we visited last time. And it said that providing, the support for his disciples by establishing the Dharma there, a new name was given to Guru Rinpoche, actually, which was Guru Shantideva, or Guardian of Peace. So with that short little interlude in E Vihara, I will pass it along to Noor, who's got another wonderful story from this sacred place.
Thank you, Peter. E Vihara is also a significant landmark from the life of Yeshe Sogyal as well. So in Tibet, Guru Rinpoche accepted, Khandro Yeshe Sogyal as his closest disciple, guiding her through years of intense discipline and profound teachings. And embracing her spiritual path, she was sent to Nepal to seek her destined consort, whose name was Arya Saleh or Atsara Saleh. During her time in Nepal, she embarked on a pilgrimage, paying homage to numerous sacred sites previously visited by her guru. Her journey eventually led her to Bhaktapur, where she discovered Arya Saleh. However, to liberate him from servitude, because he was a servant at that time owned by a family, she required gold, and this prompted her to take upon a quest which led her to E Vihara in Patan. Near the temple, she met these grieving parents who were beside their son's slain body, and moved by profound compassion, Khandro Yeshe Sogyal intended to revive the boy. After chanting a prayer and performing rituals, she restored the boy to life, healing his wounds. And in gratitude for restoring their son's life, this family, the parents, they provided her with all the gold that she required so she could ransom Arya Saleh and bring him to E Vihara. When they were at E Vihara, they met Vasudhara, the Nevar Yogi prince, and received his teachings. Later, Yeshe Sogyal took Arya Saleh to the caves of Asura and Yanglesho, sacred sites blessed by Guru Rinpoche. There, they met Belmo Shakya Devi, who was another consort of Mahaguru Padmasambhava, who, as we learned in our last webcast, had remained in Nepal and maintained her connection to these holy places. The meeting of Yeshe Sogyal and Belmo Shakya Devi, both great tantric teachers, marked a significant encounter in the lineage of tantric masters. And with that, I would like to pass the mic on to Robbie.
Thank you, Noor, and thank you, Peter, for that beautiful presentation of E Vihara. So this sort of marks the end of Guru Rinpoche's time in Nepal, as we'll hear with our next story, and we'll transition into Tibet. One thing, this may have been mentioned earlier, or maybe many of you know this, but when we speak of Nepal in this context, it's generally talking about the Kathmandu Valley specifically. And so as Guru Rinpoche is leaving the Kathmandu Valley, he stops in between to continue some of his work as a tantrika, binding these spirits. But before doing that, so just to bring it back to E Vihara, Guru Rinpoche had sort of spent his time to establish the Dharma, specifically the Vajrayana, in Nepal, that being mainly in the Kathmandu Valley, the Newar regions of the Kathmandu Valley. And after doing this, he returned to his retreat place, and Guru Rinpoche was sort of content, it seems, to stay in his retreat place of Asura and Yanglesho caves. But while he was there, the Dharma King Trisan Ditsen sent another delegation to invite Guru Rinpoche back to Tibet. And so they initially went to Asura and Yanglesho caves to find Guru Rinpoche, They didn't see him there. Eventually, they found Guru Rinpoche by this lake that you see here, Lake Nima Ku. If you've ever been to Asura or to Pharping, you've definitely passed by this. Today, it's sort of like a holiday kind of resort lake for some Nepalis. But historically, this is one of the more significant Naga lakes in the region. This lake is actually a remnant of when the Kathmandu Valley was one very large lake before Manjushri cut the gorge that drained the lake. Maybe you remember this story from our last webcast when we talked about Swayambhu a bit. But Guru Rinpoche was at this site in Lake Nimaku, just below Asura and Yanglasho. And it was on the shores of this lake that the Dharma King's emissaries offered gold and invited the Mahaguru once more to Tibet. Guru Rinpoche, of course, accepted this and immediately began his journey north. And so, in a way, this marks our transition from Guru Rinpoche's time practicing into the sort of explosion of activity that we'll see throughout the rest of our series in Tibet and beyond in the high areas of the Himalayas. Guru Rinpoche's journey brought him north into one region called Tsawarong, or the Trisuli Valley. This is a region of great significance still today. The mighty Trisuli River flows southward from Tibet through Kirong, as you see here, kind of depicted in this painting. In the area, it's known as the Kirong Tsangpo, or the Kirong River. Upon crossing the border into Nepal at the Thuman in Rasura district, the river continues through the Trisuli Valley, passing present-day Nuwakot. Historically called Tsawarong, meaning warm valley, this area is sort of, it's very much akin to what we see in India. And if any of you have ever, in the low-lying sort of parts of India in a way, very warm, if any of you have ever been to Nepal, it's not necessarily just the case that if you go north, you're immediately in a higher elevation. There's rolling hills, so you have one layer of mountains, and then oftentimes it'll drop back down again into a lower lying valley. So in this case, this is where Guru Rinpoche resided for some time before eventually crossing the border into Tibet. So Tsawarong is home to two significant sites related to Guru Rinpoche's activity. And it was here that he manifested as Khepar Pakpe Rigsin, or as you might know him in the 8 manifestations as Guru Nima Uzer. So you see here on the right side, this is Guru Rinpoche as Khepar Pakpe Rigsin. And this is sort of a powerful manifestation that he took to subjugate these spirits of the area there. One of the sites is located high above the valley, where Guru Rinpoche subdued entire hordes of powerful Genyan spirits. And the second site is at the confluence of the Tadi and Trisuli rivers, where he bound an additional 21 spirits under sacred oaths. So the site that's higher up is at a mountain known as Kailash, named because it looks very similar to Mount Kailash in Tibet. This mountain stands towering above the Tadi and Liku rivers, and Kailash remains a prominent feature of the region. Today, actually, it is, as the case for many Guru Rinpoche sites, a prominent area of Hindu pilgrimage as well. On its summit stands a Hindu shrine to Mahadev Nataraj, or the Lord of Dance, and it's also adorned with Tibetan prayer flags. So we see, many people admire this site and acknowledge it as being a site of spiritual importance. The lower site of Tsawarong is at the confluence of the Tadi and Trisuli rivers, and it's locally known there as the town of Devgat. So again, this site is also sacred to Buddhists and Hindus alike. There you also see a temple dedicated to the glorious goddess of the waters. This makes sense because the area is sort of dominated by flowing rivers in every direction. So this manifestation of Kepar Pakpe Rigzin, you may notice the name, it's referenced in the Barche Lamsel. And this prayer recounts the events that happened here at Tsawarong and then later at Mangyul, the pass leading eventually into Tibet. And Noor will share this passage with us.
When you shine like the sun over Tibet, an awe-inspiring guide for all with devotion in their heart, you display whatever forms are needed by each being to be tamed. High on the mountain pass of Sankhala, you placed the Genyan of the Dralhas under oath. Down in the valley of Tsawarong, it was the arrogant Genyan of the gods. 21 of them you made to swear fealty. In Mangul, at the Jamtrin temple, you granted siddhis to the 4 bhikshus. O Supreme Kepar Pakpe Rigzin, with your compassion, inspire us with your blessing. With your love, guide us and others along the path. With your realization, grant us siddhis. With your power, dispel the obstacles facing us all. Outer obstacles, dispel them externally. Inner obstacles, dispel them internally. Secret obstacles, dispel them into space. In devotion, I pay homage and take refuge in you. Om Ahum Benza Guru Padmasambhava.
Thank you. So now we have reached the point that Ravi and Noor already shared with us, which is the entrance of Guru Rinpoche into Tibet and the taming of the spirits one by one that Guru Rinpoche encounters. But just briefly to mention is that this previously we have, in the previous webcast, we talked about the Bachelamsa prayer and the individual 12 manifestations, and also how you can see that in the Bachelamsa prayer, each sort of section of the prayer also recounts the particular episode of Guru Rinpoche's life story, a particular accomplishment that took place during this time, but then also is connected to a particular practice for the students. Yeah? And Kepar Pakpe Rigzin, this particular emanation, is the connection to the practice that many of us might do is the practice of sang. Yeah. So here we can see that also the appeasing aspect that then for the spirits and for making the offerings through the sang practice is the smoke offering for those who don't know. So it's the offering of incense and precious substances through the fire and through the smoke to all the beings, not only the humans, but also the deities, the beings that are in the bardo, all the spirits alike. So it's this vast offering of appeasing, in particular, as in many sang offerings, spirits, yeah, and to make everything auspicious. That's just briefly on the side to draw this connection also again with the Bachelamsa prayer and this entrance into Tibet. And if we turn to now Tibet in particular, what you can see here is actually a depiction of a beautiful mural from, it's in one of the stupas, an important stupa in Minduling Monastery in Dehradun in India. And here you see a painting of the episode from the Pema Katang, and you can see the various sort of forms of Guru Rinpoche, here often standing, quite similar to Kepar Pakpe Rigzin, and taming the spirits sort of one by one. And this is what you can see here, how Guru Rinpoche sort of tamed the spirits and made them allies instead of foes to the Dharma. Yeah. So the gods and demons of Tibet, they were still laying havoc in a sense and creating obstacles wherever they could. but the spirit taming activity started, and Guru Rinpoche now approaches Mangyul, which marks sort of the border region of Nepal and Tibet. And it was in particular the realm of the enlightened activity later of the Great Turton Rigzen Gödem, which many of us know, for example, through the famous Leodunma prayer, the prayer in 7 chapters, and others. But Mangyul has a similar sort of also position to the Kathmandu Valley, in the sense that it was also an important post on this ancient trade route, and important transitionary point, sort of lower than the higher region of central Tibet, but not as low yet as Kathmandu. So there was a lot of traders, and again, scholars alike would travel through Mangyul as being one of the principal gates through which you would enter Tibet. And actually, the Trishuli River that we saw before comes from Tibet and is called there the Kirung Tsangpo. Yeah? That was the river that Guru Rinpoche was here now ascending. And you had also this lively exchange again in Mangyul of travelers and scholars alike. Also, if we, for example, learned when Khandro Yeshe Tsogyal came to Nepal, Khandro Yeshe Tsogyal, as well as other great disciples and translators at the time, all traveled through Mangyul. Mangyul had as its sort of focal point a very, very important temple. It's called the Jamtrin Lakang, and it was already mentioned now in the Barchilamsa prayer. So it was a central temple that was built by Dharma King Songtsen Gampo, so even further in the past than Dharma King Trisung Detsen. And it was at the time when Dharma King Songtsen Gampo laid the initial foundation for the Buddhist teachings to come to Tibet. And at that time, he built important temples all over Tibet that were meant to create sort of the realm and make everything auspicious for the Buddhist teachings to come and spread. And so one of these sort of, they call it border protecting temples, was this Jamtrin Lakang. And they were built on what was seen as sort of a demoness that lay over the land of Tibet in order to sort of subdue this demoness. Yeah? And the central object of this particular temple was a very important Avalokitesvara statue. And here in the next slide, this is not the temple, sorry, in the Jamtrin Lakang temple. We unfortunately don't have a picture of it, but it's an Avalokitesvara temple in Kathmandu. But the next image is of the Avalokitesvara statue, the sacred image of in the Jamtrin Lakang temple was this particular Avalokitesvara statue called Arya Vati Sangpo. It's a very, very sacred statue of Avalokitesvara, and it has a very beautiful history connected to it. Yeah. So we're going again a little bit back in time. We're jumping a little bit. I hope it's still clear for everybody. We're going back again to the time of Dharma King Songtsen Gampo and his wish to lay the foundation of the Dharma in Tibet and turn the kingdom towards the Dharma. So even the initial wish before Dharma King Trisung Detsen building the first sort of monastery of Samye. And his main deity that he had a karmic connection to was Avalokitesvara. And he had a strong wish of bringing a statue of Avalokitesvara to Tibet to bless the land through the Buddha of compassion. And then one night in one of his dreams, he saw Avalokitesvara giving him a prophecy that sacred statues were hidden in a particular forest in the south. Some say it's Nepal, some say it's even further south in India. and that in order to retrieve this Avalokitesvara statue, he would have to seek it out. It would lie hidden there in the forest. So Dharma King Songtsen Gampo sent one of his trusted monks called Akaramati Shila to retrieve this precious statue. And when Akaramati Shila eventually arrived in the said forest and at the said location, he found a sort of beautiful sandalwood tree. And before even doing anything, the tree sort of revealed 5 statues of Avalokitesvara in total that were made out of this precious sandalwood. Yeah? And this is sort of one of those 5. Yeah? And before sort of even being able to consider what to do with these 5 statues, the 5 statues spoke to Akaramati Shila and said that they wanted to be placed at sort of specific locations between Nepal and Tibet. And very interestingly, you have these 5 statues forming sort of exactly the line between sort of the ancient trade route between Nepal and Tibet, blessing very much both countries. So this is the statue, this is the 4th statue called Aryavati Sangpo, and we return to it in a short while. And here you have the statues within Nepal. So on the left and on the right-hand side, you can see the 2 statues that are painted red, that are the Avalokitesvara statues that are also present in Patan. And then in the middle, you can see the statue that resides in Kathmandu. So following the ancient trade route, let's say from E Vihara, that we discussed, if you would travel through Patan, you would visit those 2 statues, and then you would turn towards Kathmandu, where the white statue, it's currently near New Road, would reside. And then if you would travel up the valley in the direction of Mangul, then in Mangul itself, in this other very important sort of post on this ancient trade route, you would come to the Aryavati Sangpo statue that we just saw. And then you would continue further up to the statue that Akaramati Shila brought to Dharma King Songtsen Gampo himself, and that is now presently held in the Great Potala Palace, so still in Tibet. However, this statue of Aryavati Sangpo from the Mangyul temple, Jemchen Lakang, during the Cultural Revolution in a great act, was taken by the Tibetans first to Nepal and later south to Dharamsala, to the quarters of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, where it is still kept to this present day. And once a year, visitors can go and see this very significant statue and receive its blessings. Yeah? So this is the history of sort of Mangyul. So to recapture, this was sort of the border region where Guru Rinpoche is now entering Tibet. It's this important point and in that ancient trade route and a very important gate to Tibet. And it's also where it was blessed by Avalokitesvara, so much so that it says that anybody who recites or invokes to the present day Avalokitesvara in Mangyul will be reborn in the higher realms. So you can still see that there's blessings of Avalokitesvara permeate the entire region. And Guru Rinpoche not only stopped at this particular statue, but at all the statues, as it's also recorded in the biographies, Guru Rinpoche stopped and consecrated the statues one by one, so further enhancing and re-establishing their already very profound blessings. Yeah? And now we can turn to Peter, who will share how now the 3rd delegation of King Trison Detsen sent to invite Guru Rinpoche unfolds.
Thank you, Stefan. Yes, so at this point, Guru Rinpoche has been invited twice And, as we can recall, Stefan was mentioning at the beginning of this webcast that King Trisong Detsen had formed the aspiration to build Samye Monastery. Demons were rising up, causing havoc in the midst of their construction. And so the abbot Shantarakshita had reminded King Trisong Detsen of their karmic connection formed at the Bodhanath Stupa in past lives with the Tantra Guru Padmasambhava. And so he was being called and was working his way through Nepal, had gone through Tsawarong, and had now worked his way up the river valley to Mangyul. And Guru Rinpoche had been in Mangul for about 3 months and spending time there teaching the Dharma, erecting stupas, taming spirits, as well as hiding terma treasures. And while there, the third delegation, so, it's always good to invite a teacher 3 times to make it really count. So this is the third time the delegation arrived in Mangyul, and specifically in a place called Sertang, which means a plain of gold. And we'll learn in a moment why it was called that and is still called that to this day. So if Noor, you could read this quote from the Sanglingma, the Copper Palace biography of Guru Rinpoche, revealed by Nyang Ral Nimazer.
Thank you very much, Peter. So, upon meeting with the emissaries, the Mahaguru asked, "Who are you and where are you going?" Although he already well knew who they were. Mangje Salnang of Bay replied, "We were sent by the king of Tibet to request the presence of Master Padmasambhava. Are you indeed that master?" "Ah, well, yes indeed. And I was summoned here 3 months ago by the protectors. While you emissaries have been delayed by doubt and fatigue, here I've been, left waiting. You really did take your time. Now, give me whatever offering you've prepared." The party prostrated to the Mahaguru, and each offered him a full measure of gold. "Now another offering." So the emissaries gave him whatever they had in their pockets. "Now give me whatever else you have." The emissaries were distressed, saying, "But the king gave us nothing else to offer, and we ourselves haven't anything else but that." All they could do was to offer their body, speech, and mind to the Mahaguru to prostrate and circumambulate him, and touch the crown of their head to his feet. This pleased the master, who said, "I was just checking to see whether or not Tibet has faithful people who could really be transformed and changed. To me, everything that appears is gold." Then as the Mahaguru stretched out his arm towards Mangyul Gunthang, all the mountains to the right moved to the left. As he stretched out his left arm to the west, all the earth and stones turned to Z, agate, coral, and gold. Of these, he gave to each of the emissaries a measure. He then let loose a destructive stare, and the sun and moon both fell to the earth. "Now you believe?" he said. "Personally, I have no need of gold. Nevertheless, I will accept some so that your ruler may accomplish his aspiration and gain merit in the process." The Mahaguru took up their gold and tossed it in the air toward Mangyul and Nepal, declaring, "In the future, Tibet's gold will come from these areas of Mangyul and Nepal, and there will be plenty of it."
Thank you, Noor. So these Tibetan emissaries witnessed this, and immediately devotion was born. They were awestruck and began to prostrate before the Mahaguru Padmasambhava. And in that moment, they had shown themselves to be fit recipients of the Dharma. And just as a side note, in the 14th century, gold was found in these regions, fulfilling the prophecy, and Mangyul became very wealthy, as well as Western Tibet generally. But back to the story. So Guru Rinpoche now leads these 3 Tibetan emissaries to a cave behind the mountain where the Aryawati Sangpo temple stands. And it was there in that cave where the Mahaguru initiated them into the Vajrayana. And so these envoys, Kawa Paltsak was the first, second Nanam Dorje Dujam, and the third Chokro Lui Gyaltsen. So these were the first Tibetan disciples to receive Vajrayana teachings from the Mahaguru. So quite an occasion. Happened in Mangul, and the cave became known as the Ngudrukpuk, or the Cave of Cities, which is still there today. So again, the Mahaguru is now arriving in Tibet. He is with these 3 new disciples, Tibetan disciples, and Samye has yet to be built. It's still undergoing struggles. But to get there, Guru Rinpoche is going to have to travel quite a ways to central Tibet. And along the way, this is a theme we've been hearing quite a bit. There's many spirits to be tamed, many unruly demons, haughty spirits, arrogant sorts of beings who perhaps consider themselves as the most powerful in the region. And so, for instance, as they continue, they come upon a place known as the Palkutso, or the Lake of Glory, just beyond the Gungtang Pass outside of Mangyul. And this is kind of one of the first sort of major Tibetan spirits for Guru Rinpoche to encounter. Again, this is from the Sanglingma of Noor. You could read a little bit about this episode.
Thank you, Peter. Gladly. As they descended to northern Namtang, or Sky Plain, suddenly Namen Karmu, or White Sky Lady, started sending down bolts of lightning. The Mahaguru stretched out his left palm, in which there was mirror-like water, and drew the lightning bolts into the water until they were shrunken and dry, the size of 7 peas. The lady took fright at the sight and fled to Palmo Paltso, or glorious lake of the glorious lady. The master then made a threatening gesture, and the lake became an inferno. As the lake began to boil, the lady's flesh began falling from her bones, and again she fled. The master then flung his vajra and hit her in the right eye, at which she pleaded, "Successor of the teacher, Dorje Totreng Sal, please don't make any more obstacles for me. Please accept my apologies." She then offered him the essence of her life force and was bound under oath, taking the name Gankar Shame Dorje Chenchekma, or in English, fleshless, one-eyed Vajra lady of the white glaciers.
Thank you. Yes. So this Gankar Shame, this fleshless lady, had now been bound to oath by Guru Rinpoche through his tantric mastery, through his power. And she became one of the Tenma goddesses who Guru Rinpoche had also tamed one already in Asura cave, actually. And these were to be protectors of the Vajrakalaya mandala, and still are. Later, she was given the secret name Dorje Yudrunma, which some of us might have heard of before. So we can see here that as Guru Rinpoche is going through the landscape, he's bringing in these troublesome spirits, often through awe-inspiring means, and bringing them as protectors of the Dharma. To this day, the Tenma goddesses are still revered in Mangyul, the 12 Tenma goddesses. And the people of Mangyul remember this story, and they will actually go to this lake of Palkutso, where this occurred, to pay homage to her and the Tenma goddesses generally. So that's it for me. Stefan, please.
Yes, thank you. So just to conclude here with our webcast slowly. So one of the highlights, as you can see, also stretching through today is the 3 invitations consecutive of Guru Rinpoche and sort of the progressing towards Tibet, and of course, not only blessing the land and establishing, for example, the seat of E Vihara, and blessing the sacred Avalokitesvara statues, but really beginning this taming and preparation of the sacred land also of Tibet to establish the tantric teachings and transform all the forces. But you can also see really how Guru Rinpoche, in his great kindness, also really encouraged the Tibetans to display their devotion, but also to reflect themselves upon the importance of the establishment of Buddhism, and that it's sort of not really something that you can just take, in a sense, lightly here already, in a sense of you, how to say, casually do sort of one invitation and then everything works out from there. It's also something that we can reflect upon ourselves in our spiritual journey, and the importance, for example, of inviting nowadays the great teachers to the places that we live or to the Dharma centers. And actually, you can see here that as reflected in the story, Guru Rinpoche does this also for the disciples, because it really transforms their mind and it really sets their mind towards the Dharma, and it sort of makes them reflect and open their mind and be really sure of this, what they that they want, and also to really open up themselves to the Dharma and to the teacher. Yeah, that in this case, the great teacher Guru Rinpoche being invited. And then you can see also how Guru Rinpoche initiates the first Tibetan disciples, which are this delegation into the Vajrayana teachings. So these were really the first disciples, the first students who became then the Guru's disciples, and continue to support Guru Rinpoche through his entire endeavor in Tibet. Yeah, not just acting as sort of the first invitation party, but really becoming heart disciples of the Guru. And this was our talk for today. So from the next times onwards, we will gradually look at the sacred sites of Guru Rinpoche in Tibet. And then for today's webcast, we conclude here with also one announcement or two that Robbie will share with you.
Yeah, thank you all. This was really great having everybody once again gathering in this online virtual space from all over the world. It really is amazing to see us all come together. And we're every month just very delighted to be able to share these accounts with you. And I think when we look back on Guru Rinpoche's activity, we still engage with these events as we look in some of the protector practices. For those of you that do that sort of practice, you'll see many of these come up time and time again. So this isn't necessarily just something that happened in the distant past and are sort of stories from an ancient time that don't really have anything to do with today's era. These are very much a part of the pantheon of Buddhist practice, Vajrayana practice to this day. And for those of you that are joining us, or for those of you that are aspiring to do so, if you were excited hearing about this site of E Vihara, I'm happy to announce that will be part of our pilgrimage in 2025 in March. This, along with other sites around Patan, we'll explore. If you do still want to join, we have room, a few slots left, but we do have room So if you wish to join, you can scan the QR code below. We will, you've met the four of us, be guiding you along the path, but it won't be just us. We'll also be joined by senior lamas from Kaining Shedrabling, who will guide us in practice at each of these sites to really connect in a more profound and direct way to these blessings that we're describing. I think as much as we talk about these places, you can't really do them justice unless you really visit them and connect in a very direct way to the blessings. And then they become much more clear what the significance is of these places. So again, if you do want to register, there is still time. And if you have any questions about the pilgrimage, please reach out to us at info@samyetranslations.org, and I will do my best to respond to you in a timely manner. The other announcement is related to Guru Rinpoche's life story and the books that we've written over the years. So following in your footsteps, the Lotus-Born Guru is a three-part series we've published as the Lotus-Born Guru in Nepal, the Lotus-Born Guru in India, and the Lotus-Born Guru in Tibet. If you wish to order a copy of these books, we are releasing them once again for a limited time. You can order them through Amazon, and we have already seen an increase in sales of these books, so we appreciate that from everybody who has sort of shown an uptick in interest. But all of these stories that we're sharing with you throughout the webcast, they're presented in a more detailed fashion here in the book, so you can really get to know these sites and the events that happen there in a more intimate way through the books. And lastly, if there are any questions, we would like to open the floor to anyone that might have any questions. Let me see in the chat here. There is one in Spanish, which I can read slightly, but maybe one of our interpreters could help with that.
It's a thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Así de muchas gracias part. Oh, I see. Okay. So if there aren't any questions, that's also okay. No problem. So perhaps we can conclude here. One second. Okay, we do have a few questions that have came up. One of them, can you explain the Kagya deities?
That came up in a previous webcast already. We can touch briefly upon them when we're in Tibet, because at the sacred site of Samye Chimpu, the Mahaguru Padmasambhava initiates the disciples into the mandala of the Kagya deities. So when we reach this point, maybe in 2 webcasts, I believe. So in February, we'll reach there and then share the origin story as well.
And then we have another one, the 10 Tenmas. Can we have the possible names of each of them? That might be.
I think that came also up in the last webcast. So if you look it up in the internet and, for example, look on the Rigpa wiki site, there's actually a list of all of them. So you can find them there. I think that's probably the most easily accessible, because just to read out a long list is probably maybe not so helpful.
Oh, and Peter posted a helpful link regarding the Tenma sisters. And then someone else is asking for a bit more information on the Matam Deer Temple, which is the in the Padma goddess.
And one question from the chat was regarding Guru Rinpoche's past life. Yes, that's the idea, that this Guru Rinpoche formed the aspiration to become the tantric guru that we're sharing the life story here with, and in a past life at the stupa of Bodha. Yeah, this is sort of Guru Rinpoche, along with 3 more brothers, helped to build the stupa of Bodha, and then made these great aspirations of spreading the teachings far to the north. And if you want to hear more about that, you can revisit, for example, our first webcast, or, for example, read the story in the Guru Rinpoche book, or visit our website, yeah, giving you sort of the full history there of what unfolded.
And just briefly to add, it's not only a past life, it's a past eon. So this is said to have taken place in the time of Buddha Kashyapa. So if that helps to sort of place it a little bit.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah, very a long period of time. Then we can conclude here. Robbie, please guide us in the dedication. And thank you so much to everybody for joining. It's always a pleasure. And I hope you had a good time, and we see you in the next webcast.
Through this merit, may all attain omniscience and conquer the enemy, wrong action. May all be freed from samsara's ocean and its profound waves of old age, or its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Thank you all. We will see you again next month. Happy Guru Rinpoche Day.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. See you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Happy Guru Rinpoche Day. Bye.